It's said that about 40% of our daily actions aren't decisions at all, they're habits. Automatic, unconscious routines quietly control much of our lives. That statistic hit me hard when I first read it, but I didn't grasp how true it was until my life began to unravel. The power of habit is both transformative and destructive, and for far too long, I lived on the destructive side. My days were ruled by compulsions I didn't even realize I had, until they became impossible to ignore. At the heart of it, my life felt like a prison I had built brick by brick without noticing. Each brick was a small action I repeated without question, waking up just in time to rush through my day, eating fast food I didn't even enjoy, scrolling endlessly through my phone when I should have been sleeping. These behaviors seemed harmless on the surface, but they slowly stole my energy, my health, and my happiness. I would often think, I'll change tomorrow. But tomorrow always came, and nothing changed. The breaking point came one night when I sat in the dark, staring at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. I had just binged an entire series of some show I couldn't even remember the name of. It was past midnight. My heart ached with the familiar weight of disappointment. I was exhausted, drained from another day wasted, yet somehow, I couldn't turn off the noise. I didn't want to face the silence because silence reminded me of how far I had fallen. I had dreams once, big ones. I wanted to write a novel, travel the world, maybe even run a marathon. But those dreams had withered under the weight of my daily routines. I was trapped in an endless loop of unhealthy choices. My health deteriorated. I gained weight. My relationships grew distant. I felt like a bystander in my own life, watching the days slip by, powerless to do anything about it. I didn't realize how powerful habits could be until they controlled me. Mornings started with the same groggy routine: hit snooze, roll over, scroll. It wasn't just the screen time that hurt, it was the mindset. Every day started with avoidance, with numbing. I lived in this haze, convincing myself that change was too hard, too far away. I felt like a failure, stuck in a cycle I couldn't break. I remember one particularly bad day when I had promised myself I would start fresh. I had laid out workout clothes, prepped a healthy breakfast, and set my alarm early. But when the morning came, I didn't even lift my head from the pillow. I hit snooze. Again and again. By the time I finally got up, the day was already a disaster. I stood in the shower, the water scalding hot, tears mixing with the steam. I felt weak, ashamed, and broken. One evening, I tried to explain my struggle to a close friend. I told them how I felt like I was trapped in a fog, unable to break free from these habits that were ruining my life. Their response stung: "Why don't you just stop?" The simplicity of their words enraged me. I wanted to scream, "Don't you think I've tried?" But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and changed the subject. I felt so alone, drowning in a sea of my own making, and it seemed like no one understood. I hated myself for not having the willpower to change. I'd start every week with fresh determination only to crumble by Wednesday, if not sooner. I felt like I was broken, flawed beyond repair. I would lie awake at night wondering if this was all life had to offer. The weight of my own expectations was crushing me, and I felt suffocated by my inability to live up to them. I remember sitting on the floor of my bedroom one night, the only light coming from the glow of my phone. I scrolled through photos of people who seemed so full of life, achieving goals I could only dream of. The pain in my chest was overwhelming, a heavy ache of inadequacy. Why couldn't I be like them? Why couldn't I change? The truth is, habits can feel like chains, binding you to a life you never chose. Every day, I woke up feeling defeated before I even started. I was caught in a loop, and I couldn't see a way out. The hardest part wasn't the exhaustion, the weight gain, or the missed opportunities. It was the feeling that I would never be enough, that I would never escape the cycle. Looking back, I realized that my struggle was about more than just breaking bad habits. It was about facing the darkest parts of myself, the parts one had hidden for so long. I was terrified of failure, so I avoided change altogether. I was afraid of success, too, because what if I wasn't good enough to maintain it? I lived in a state of paralysis, afraid to move forward but unable to stay where I was. I didn't know it then, but my life was on the brink of transformation. The solutions, the tools I would use to rebuild myself, were closer than I could have imagined. But in those darkest moments, all I felt was despair. I clung to the hope that somehow, somewhere, there was a way out of this cycle, a way to reclaim my life from the grip of destructive habits. And that hope was the only thing that kept me going. There were nights when I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the crushing weight of everything I had failed to do. The minutes stretched into hours, and my mind replayed the same haunting thoughts. Why can't you just change? Why are you so weak? The silence of the room felt deafening, the only sound the ticking of the clock, a constant reminder that time was slipping through my fingers. I felt trapped in a life that I no longer recognized, yet I couldn't muster the strength to change the trajectory. The worst part was the shame. I felt ashamed that I couldn't break free from the simplest habits, things that seemed so trivial to others. I envied people who could wake up early, exercise, eat well, and go to bed feeling accomplished. For me, each day felt like a war, and I lost every single battle. I wasn't just fighting against the habits, I was fighting against the voice in my head telling me I would never be enough. One particularly painful moment still lingers in my memory. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was sitting on my couch, staring at a pile of laundry that had been sitting there for days. I had planned to clean the apartment, organize my life, and finally feel in control. But instead, I sat frozen, scrolling through my phone in a daze. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room, and I felt this overwhelming wave of sadness. Another wasted day. That night, I broke down completely. I sobbed uncontrollably, not even knowing why I was crying anymore. It wasn't just the laundry or the missed opportunities, it was the overwhelming sense of failure that consumed me. I felt like I had let everyone down, but mostly, I had let myself down. I cried until there were no tears left, my chest heaving with the exhaustion of it all. I wish I could say that was the turning point, but it wasn't. The next day, I woke up and fell into the same patterns. I wanted to change, desperately, but it felt like the harder I tried, the more I failed. I would tell myself that tomorrow would be different, that I would find the strength to break free. But every time, the same thing happened, I slipped back into the comfort of the familiar, even though it was destroying me. The pain of staying the same was unbearable, but the fear of change felt even worse. I had convinced myself that I wasn't capable of more. I believed that I would always be stuck in this cycle of self-destruction, that my life was destined to be a series of broken promises to myself. Every small failure chipped away at my confidence, and I felt like I was disappearing, piece by piece. I remember one night, sitting in the dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside my window. I whispered into the emptiness, "I don't want to live like this anymore." My voice cracked under the weight of those words. It wasn't a declaration of hope, it was a plea for something to change. But I didn't know how. There were moments when I thought I had reached my breaking point, only to find that the bottom could sink even lower. My body felt heavy, my mind clouded, my heart numb. I had become a shell of who I used to be, lost in a maze of habits I couldn't break. Every attempt to change felt like climbing a mountain with no summit in sight. I was exhausted, broken, and ready to give up. But somewhere deep inside, buried beneath the pain and the doubt, a tiny spark remained. It wasn't hope, not yet. It was something quieter, something fragile. It was the faintest whisper that maybe, just maybe, there was still a way out. That fragile spark, the faint whisper that things could change, was enough to pull me forward, even if I didn't know how to begin. I was exhausted, broken, but somewhere deep inside, I still wanted more for myself. I realized that the problem wasn't just the habits I had formed, it was the belief that I was powerless to change. The first step was painfully simple but profoundly difficult. I had to believe that change was possible. I didn't wake up one morning magically transformed. Instead, I started small. My first step wasn't bold or dramatic. It was embarrassingly simple. I set my alarm 5 minutes earlier than usual. Just 5 minutes. It felt silly at first, but it was the only thing I could manage. I told myself that if I could conquer those 5 minutes, maybe I could conquer something bigger later. And that was where the change began. I didn't trust myself anymore, so I needed to rebuild that trust in the smallest possible ways. Every day, I got up 5 minutes earlier, and every day I proved to myself that I could follow through on one small promise. It was a drop in the ocean, but it mattered. The act of showing up for myself, even in such a minor way, became the foundation for something greater. Next, I focused on one simple habit I wanted to change. Instead of scrolling through my phone first thing in the morning, I placed it across the room, forcing myself to get up to turn off the alarm. It was a tiny adjustment, but it made a huge difference. Those few moments away from the screen allowed me to breathe, to be present, and to think about how I wanted my day to unfold. It wasn't easy, but I learned that the power of habit is rooted in consistency, not perfection. As I gained momentum, I began stacking small habits on top of each other. I started drinking a glass of water as soon as I got out of bed. I made my bed each morning, something I used to dismiss as pointless. But these actions weren't about the tasks themselves, they were about reclaiming control. Each small victory gave me a sense of accomplishment that grew over time. I also learned to be gentle with myself. In the past, I would beat myself up for every slip, every missed opportunity. But I realized that self-compassion was essential. I stopped expecting perfection and started celebrating progress. Some days I slipped back into old patterns, and that was okay. What mattered was that I kept going. Seeking support was another vital step. I shared my struggles with a close friend who didn't judge me but encouraged me to keep pushing forward. Their understanding and encouragement reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that simple truth gave me strength. I also sought out resources that could guide me, knowing I couldn't do it alone. The journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks, days when I felt like giving up, but I clung to the belief that change was possible. I kept moving forward, even when it felt like I was crawling. Slowly, I began to notice the changes. I felt lighter, more energized, more hopeful. My life was no longer controlled by mindless routines. I was finally breaking free from the habits that had held me captive for so long. But it wasn't until I discovered the power of habit, create positive habits and break unwanted ones, that everything truly clicked. This book was the turning point that helped me understand the science behind my behavior and gave me the tools to reshape my life. It showed me that habits aren't destiny, they can be changed with the right approach. The practical strategies in the book guided me step by step, empowering me to take control of my habits in a way I never thought possible. If you're struggling, if you feel trapped like I did, I can't recommend this book enough. It gave me the clarity, the motivation, and the tools to transform my life. You can find a digital copy at librify.com, the link is in the description. Don't wait another day feeling stuck. Take the first small step. It could change everything. When I first opened The Power of Habit, Create Positive Habits and Break Unwanted Ones, I wasn't expecting much. I thought it might be like the other books I had skimmed through in desperation, offering generic advice that never stuck. But from the very first chapter, something felt different. The author didn't just tell me what to do, this book made me see why I kept falling into the same patterns over and over. For the first time, I understood that my habits weren't a reflection of my willpower or worth. They were just loops, triggers, routines, and rewards that had been running my life. That realization was both freeing and overwhelming. I finally saw that I wasn't broken. My brain had simply wired itself around these patterns, and it could be rewired. The concept of the habit loop, A trigger that sets off a routine, which leads to a reward, resonated deeply. I could finally identify the cues that were triggering my destructive habits. And for the first time, I had a clear path forward: change the routine, not the trigger, and find a better reward. One of my most damaging habits was the way I used food for comfort. Every evening, after a long day, I would find myself mindlessly eating in front of the TV. I wasn't even hungry, but the act of eating felt like relief from the stress and emptiness I carried. It wasn't until I read the book that I realized my habit wasn't about the food. It was about needing comfort. The trigger was the end of the day, the routine was eating, and the reward was a temporary sense of calm. With the book's guidance, I experimented with new routines. Instead of reaching for food, I started going for a short walk or brewing a cup of tea. At first, it felt unnatural, even pointless. But I kept at it, and over time, those new routines began to stick. The reward was still comfort, but now it came from something healthier and more fulfilling. I learned how to hack my habit loop, and it felt like I had discovered a secret code to unlock a better version of myself. The book also taught me the importance of keystone habits, those powerful behaviors that create a ripple effect throughout your life. For me, one keystone habit was journaling every morning. It started as a way to clear my mind, but it quickly became much more. Writing down my thoughts helped me track my progress, identify patterns, and hold myself accountable. It became a form of therapy, a way to reconnect with myself in a meaningful way. Another crucial habit I adopted was mindfulness. The book emphasized the importance of being aware of the triggers in my environment, and I started paying attention to the moments when I felt the urge to fall back into old patterns. Instead of reacting automatically, I paused. I asked myself, what am I feeling right now? What do I really need? That simple act of mindfulness gave me the space to choose a different response. It wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. One of the most powerful lessons I learned was that willpower is like a muscle. It can be strengthened, but it can also become fatigued. The book helped me understand how to build my willpower in sustainable ways, by setting realistic goals and giving myself permission to rest when I needed it. I stopped expecting perfection and started focusing on progress. That mindset shift changed everything. I also began to recognize the power of community. The book talked about how social support can reinforce new habits, and I reached out to a few friends who were also working on their own personal growth. We held each other accountable, celebrated small wins, and offered encouragement when things got tough. Knowing I wasn't alone made the journey less daunting and far more rewarding. Over time, these small, consistent changes added up to something extraordinary. My life transformed in ways I never thought possible. I was no longer a prisoner to my old habits. I felt free, empowered, and in control. The crushing weight of shame and failure lifted, replaced by a sense of pride and accomplishment. I finally believed in myself again. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of bad habits, if you've ever felt like change was out of reach, I'm here to tell you that it's not. The journey isn't easy, but it's possible. And it starts with understanding how habits work, and how you can change them. The power of habit: create positive habits and break unwanted ones was the turning point for me. It didn't just change my habits, it changed my life. If you're ready to break free from the habits that are holding you back, I highly recommend grabbing a copy. You can find the digital version at librify.com, the link is in the description. Don't wait. Your new life is waiting on the other side of that first small step.